So my objective is I want to look at the significance of the question and the problem in that the question is not addressed. We don't ask what is a Jew. We ask everything else, who is a Jew and so forth. We don't ask what is a Jew, and that's making a mess of our own ability to discuss things. And in that process, we avoid what I think is most significant ways of dealing with issues confronting Jewish identity, because we want to avoid the real problems. We want to avoid the real issues. And therefore we do so by sort of hiding over it. There are people who say, don't call me Reformed, I'm just a Jew. Just call me a Jew. And there is nothing worse for the future of Jewish identity and Jewish commitment than the person who says, just call me a Jew. That is perhaps the greatest problem facing us. That person is basically saying to you, here's how we're going to deal with the problem, avoiding it. We're not going to discuss it, we're not going to deal with it, we're not going to discuss Jewish identity. I'm just going to avoid it. And that's why it's a problem. So I want to discuss what is a Jew. So let me start there. Let me throw out that question. What is a Jew? Don't want to be the guinea pig and give me an answer what a Jew is. Come on, someone's got to be able to lead with their jaw. Yeah, sir.
Anybody that says he's Jewish.
Anybody who says he's Jewish. Great. Great. Brother Daniel was a Jew. Thank you very much, because he said he was Jewish. You know who Brother Daniel was, right? Okay, he was a Carmelite monk who attempted to enter the law of return as a Jew, because his mother was Jewish. And he had to avoid the Holocaust. He was placed in a convent, became a Christian monk, and then in the 50s, basically said that I want to become. He could have become a Jewish citizen anyway, because he already could have become an Israeli citizen anyways, because he was already living in Israel. But he wanted to come in under the law of return to establish himself as Jewish. And the Supreme Court of Israel basically said, I'm sorry, if you believe in Jesus, it can't be Jewish. Which is a little bit of a problem. By the way, that's the first case of a non-halachic decision on Jewish identity accepted by the Israeli court, from my understanding. There's another person who also said anyone who wants to call himself Jewish should be allowed to be Jewish under the law of return. A guy by the name of David Ben-Gurion, that was his first answer too. And then he responded by sending out a letter to 50 Chachmei Yisrael, 50 scholars of the Jewish people, and said, we need some definition of what is a Jew if we're going to have the law of return. And they basically said, I don't think it should just be who calls himself a Jew. Okay, so any other suggestions? Yeah.
Sure. As I recall, as a teenager in the 50s, we always concluded this discussion by saying, if they call you a Jew, you're a Jew.
Okay. So if the anti-Semite calls you a Jew, you're a Jew, right? Interesting. So Jewish identity is decided by Khmelnytsky, Yimach Shemo, Hitler, Yimach Shemo. This is where we get Jewish identity from. It's not a very positive way to define Jewish identity, I don't think. Okay? Now, the truth of the matter is they may call you a Jew, but the fact is that there might be people who are called Jews by anti-Semites who we may not consider to be Jews. Like I'm reading a book by, what's his name? Tariq Fatah. He's a Muslim writer and so forth. And he points out that Sunnis call Shiites Jews. Okay, so I guess you tell Khomeini is a Jew because someone calls him a Jew. No problem with the answer? Okay, next. Okay.
I'm just going to say, you won't make me like this one, but I've heard it and I like it. It used to be that if your grandparents were Jews, you were a Jew. Now, if your grandchildren are Jews, you're a Jew.
Yeah, what does that mean? I mean, it's very nice if grandchildren are Jews and so forth, but it's a little bit more technical. Yeah, next.
So far, I think we've been talking about who is a Jew.
No, what is it? The world has been talking about who is a Jew, not me.
But in this room,
Yeah?
People have been talking about who is a Jew. Someone who's called a Jew, someone who...
Okay.
Who is a Jew? Now, what is a Jew? I think there's a semantic problem. Because the word Jew is used in two contexts. One is Jewish religion, and the other is Jewish nation. So in Hebrew, if you say Hadat HaYehudi, it's the Jewish religion. Ha'am HaIvri is the Jewish nation, or the
Yeah.
Hebrew nation. And in that context, the Jewish nation is a nation like there's an Arab nation. It has nothing to do with religion necessarily, even though most of the Arab nation is Muslim. But there's a large
Okay.
number in Israel of people who are secular, who do not have any religious affiliation whatsoever, but they are Jews and they are Israeli.
What you have defined is the problem. What you really define is the problem. There is one term, it's called Jew. Okay? Now, if I ask you what is an apple, what will you tell me? If you're born on an apple tree, you're an apple. Right? What's an apple? I'm sure there must be some scientific definition with genes and everything else like that. But the fact of the matter is, you're absolutely correct. The issue of what is a Jew is what is this grouping? In other words, when you say people are Jews, okay, and that's and you're saying it's Jewish nationalism and Jewish religion, well, how come people who are atheists, who may identify with the Jewish nation, are called Jews, and people who are anti-Zionist but identify with the Jewish religion are called Jews? And by the way, in terms of members of Jewish religions who are anti-Zionist, okay, that goes from historically the Reform movement until the 20th century. Reform movement was adamantly anti-Zionist, and of course, certain aspects of the Orthodox world was anti-Zionist. Okay, religion really was at odds with nation for many, many people. But the point is that the distinction that you make? Do you actually say to someone, are you religiously Jewish or nationalistically Jewish? Because they're two separate things. I want a fruit juice. Are you orange juice or apple juice? Because I don't want apple juice if you're orange juice. Is that what you say when you talk about Jews? You don't? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. You use the apple as an example. There are varieties of apple.
Yes, there are.
What if we change that and say a Jew is a fruit? Because most of us think of a fruit as, grape, an apple, an orange, but most of us don't think of it, but a tomato is also a fruit.
Yes. And by the way, you're presenting another possibility of understanding Jewish identity, which is an identity that accepts that accepts differences among Jews. I was once speaking to an individual. This is in my rabbinic career. This was in Kingston, New York. And I was speaking to an individual who converted to Reform Judaism. Very, very committed. Him and his wife both converted to Judaism because they believed in Reform Judaism. And we were talking about different things. And we were talking about the fact that they, as a convert to Reform Judaism, would not be accepted by other people as a convert, and so forth and so forth. So I was discussing with him at the time a consideration, if he would consider, I just brought it up, I said, would you consider an Orthodox conversion? And he looked at me with tremendous anger, said, Rabbi, I believe in Reform Judaism, not Orthodox Judaism. I am insulted that you should even bring up that question. Now, how many people you would agree with me? Reform Judaism, the relationship of Reform Judaism to Orthodox Judaism is exactly the same as the relationship between Roman Catholicism and the Church of Jesus of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormons. Is that the relationship? No. Oh, it isn't? Why not? Oh, because they're all Jews. So what's a Jew? Okay. Now, by the way, I'm not saying that that relationship is a good way of expressing it, but I could tell you one thing, There are differences between Orthodox Judaism and Reconstructionist Judaism that far and away are greater than differences between various different parts of Christianity. Okay? And how many people here really, really understand when they talk about Muslims the difference between the Shiite Muslim and the Sunni Muslim? And that you can never put them in the same room. It's just Muslims. They're all Muslims. Shiites and Sunnis kill each other. They're mortal enemies of each other. How many people recognize that? Now, Baruch Hashem, we don't have that same thing.
Just to comment on that, I don't know how many, but a vast number beyond count of Sunni and Shiite Muslims and other people who don't kill each other.
Yes, absolutely. And that's because you're absolutely correct. Because you corrected me on something. I'm talking about traditional Shiite and traditional Sunnis in the extreme, the more right-wing presentations of that religion. Okay, while there are reformers within Islam, both in the Shiite community and the Sunni community, who basically try to reconcile, which is very, very similar to progressive Christians and more traditional Christians. Islam is not monolithic. Part of that lack of monolithic aspect is the Shiite Sunni, and also part of it is the fact that there's a very progressive side to Islam as well, just as there is a modern side within Christianity and Judaism. And that comes about through analyzing what you're talking about in terms of identity. But the fact is that also leads to the issue of the difference between Reform Judaism and Orthodox Judaism, or Conservative Judaism, or Reconstructionist Judaism. How many people understand the theological differences? Okay? Or let's throw another grouping into this. Messianic Judaism. Is that another branch of Judaism?
No.
Why not?
Because they embrace the notion of a Messiah.
They embrace the notion of Messiah?
That Jesus is the Messiah.
Oh, really? And that changes everything. That's the one theological thing. Okay. It is? It really is. Interesting. Do you ever hear of Lubavitch? Yes. Okay, Lubavitch has a group in Lubavitch which are called Mashiachas. Okay. What do Mashiachas believe in? They say the Rabbi was Mashiach. Okay? What category are they in?
I guess they would be considered by some Jews as apostates, wouldn't they?
A person by the name of David Berger has written a book about this, and he does believe them to be outside the pale of a Jewish world. But then again, he'll also argue that Reform Judaism is outside the pale of Orthodox thought. But the fact of the matter is, it's a little bit of a tension and so forth. Some people say the difference between the Mashiachas and Messianics is because the Mashiachas still abide by Torah, still abide by the observance of Halacha. That was the position of Rabbi Emanuel Shoichet in his arguments against David Berger. The fact of the matter is, it's very interesting. The one theological principle everyone knows about in terms of Jews is we don't believe in Jesus. But, you know what a Judah is? Juddhah? What?
Praise God.
No, it's a term for Jews. Jews who accept Buddhism. Judas. You know how many Jews accept Buddhism? That's okay, right? They don't accept Jesus as Messiah, therefore they're accepted in the community. I saw CJN once have a whole article on them. Think CJN would have an article on Messianics? The problem is that when you get into it, there is actually 2 books on the market. They were from the 90s or from the first decade of this century. One was written by a Reconstructionist rabbi from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and the other one was written by a Reform rabbi as a professor at the University of Wales. The first one raised the question, why isn't Messianic Judaism just another branch of Judaism under the canopy of pluralism? The second one came out forthright. Messianic Judaism is just another branch of Judaism in terms of pluralism. These are Jews who have a different form of Judaism called Messianic Judaism, with the historical argument that the first followers of Jesus were? Yes. Okay? Now, the fact of the matter is, it's a little bit of a problem. I'm not advocating this. I'm just saying that when you present the answers, such as, well, why is it that belief in Jesus is the one thing? And if you're an atheist, you can be an atheist and a Jew. You don't believe in God at all, you're a Jew. But if you have a little bit of a little fetch on that God, not a Jew anymore. And we're all happy with that. And by the way, these Messianic Jews are very much part of what you said, nationalistic Jews. So a lot of them in Israel. In fact, there was a case that came up a few years ago. Did you guys hear about this? There's something in Israel called the Chidon HaTanakh. You guys know what it is? It's a comprehensive test on the knowledge of the Bible, the Old Testament, the Tanakh, right? And it was started by the education ministry in Israel because the early secular Zionists were very committed to the Tanakh. They felt that Tanakh expressed Jewish and Jewish national identity. And therefore, the early people involved with Zionism were very much experts in Tanakh. David Ben-Gurion was known as a scholar of the Tanakh. Okay? And therefore, the secular Zionists wanted to encourage the study of Tanakh, and therefore, they pushed the Chidon Tanakh, and they created, not in the Mosad Dati, not in the religious ministry, in the education ministry. Eventually, the Chidon Tanakh was taken over by the religious became very involved with it and so forth, that the Chidon Tanakh, basically over here, it's a lot of religious schools get involved and so forth, the Zionist religious schools and so forth. But Chidon Tanakh was a big thing in Israel. And a few years ago, one of the person who won, who became a finalist for the final test of the Chidon Tanakh, the final national test of Chidon Tanakh, was a Messianic Jewish girl. A girl who was Jews for Jesus, living in Israel, who really knew her Tanakh. Why did she really know her Tanakh? Because what do Christians do? They really know their Tanakh. Right. So the point is she was one of the she was a finalist. And everyone was going crazy. What happens if she wins? That'd be great. Jews for Jesus Jews for Jesus girl wins the Chidon Tanakh. Okay? So the chief rabbinate came out and said, we have to cancel the test this year. We're not taking any chances. No test this year. But I said beforehand, who is the test under? Not the Mosad Dati, not the religious ministry. It was under the education ministry. And the education ministry said, no, we're going to head with this. Okay? It was a whole big issue. Baruch Hashem, she didn't win. But the fact is these are examples of the problems answers we give. You're giving me the answers. And the problems that we live with in not dealing with the issue. We sort of colloquially have an idea of who is a Jew. And we sort of, something like, listen, Bishop Lustiger. Who is Bishop Lustiger? A good Jewish boy, come on, said Kaddish for his mother. Yes, he did. Who was he? Bishop Lustiger, or Cardinal Lustiger. Right? The Bishop of Paris, who almost won the papal runoff, right? He was in the running. Who was a cardinal. And boy, he snuck out without his cardinal gloves every day to go say Kaddish in a little steeple down the street where they didn't know him, so he could say Kaddish for his mother. Okay? Everyone likes to talk about the bishop who was a Jew. The point is that it raises an issue. So what is a Jew? What is a Jew? Yeah.
I don't care what you are, whether you're Reform or whatever. We are Jews. We are covenantal people. Whether you believe it or not, it's still true. That's us.
Okay, what does that mean?
That we're chosen. God chose us. We chose him.
Okay, so you're imposing the religious viewpoint on the atheist. You're saying you're a Jew. I know you don't believe in God, but you're still a Jew because God chose you.
Not yet.
Okay.
I know it.
Okay. And we sort of know who's a Jew, and that Bishop Lustiger really is a Yid. a little Meshuggah maybe, but he's a Yid, come on, we're waiting for you to come back. Okay.
Well, how about Ruth? Was she a Jew?
Was Ruth a Jew? What, you don't accept converts?
No, I'm asking you.
Me? What do you mean Ruth was a Jew? Of course Ruth was a Jew.
Okay.
She was the mother of the Malchus.
Yes.
If you look in terms of genealogy, if a person wants to show how important his family is, what do? Look back in terms of hierarchy and so forth and so forth. If you want to, the person goes back to George. If you want to make it big in the States, George Washington was my second cousin's uncle. Everyone tries hard. Whose hierarchy do we follow? When they want to show how great the family of David and Melch is, yeah, they mention that he came from Shevet Yehuda and so forth. But what's the real yichus of David and Melch, if I may use that term? What's the real yichus? That he was descended from Ruth, the Moabite, who was a ger ascetic. We not only like converts, we take him in greatly. Okay, so the fact is a convert is a Jew. But that says something interesting, because what you're saying is that convert is chosen to come under the covenantal canopy of God. So you have a nice definition. The point is, though, is everyone buy your definition? And okay, and that's great. That's great. Except, does everyone in this room buy that definition?
If we did, we wouldn't be Jews.
If we did,
We all agree.
the problem is. Okay, so okay, and how close is Barack Obama to that covenantal canopy? Because President Obama said he's the closest thing to a Jew that ever occupied the Oval Office.
So did Trump say that?
Okay, wait a second. What are they saying? It's interesting. I didn't hear Trump say it, but when Barack Obama said that, how many people agree with the president's statement that he's the closest thing to a Jew to ever occupy the Oval Office? What? Oh, the fact is, you go to certain people and you sit there and say, he's the most anti-Semitic person ever. There's people, and there's other people say, yeah. There are people who say, yeah, I understand that. Now, what's he really saying? What's he really saying? He has a certain definition of what it means to be a Jew. Okay?
Maybe philosophically.
Philosophically, he believes a Jew has certain values, which 70% of the American Jews seem to have because they all voted for him. And the fact of the matter is, liberal values, and that's being Jewish, and so forth and so forth. And that, minds of many Jews, they're disgusted that Obama would even consider himself to have any connection with the Jewish people. Other people say, no, he really is close to being a Jew. He just didn't, go the whole way. And yet there are other people, and with Benjamin Netanyahu, people would say that he's a Jew, and other people would say, he's not really a Jew. Look at the way he acts. Because then you get into philosophy. It's not just what you believe. It's not just what you believe in terms of the deity or religion. It also touches upon your theology, your philosophy, your ethics. Is a Jew in favor of what Trump's doing in the States? Or is a Jew not in favor of it? So Jews, yes. What? Yes and no. Yes and no. Okay? The point is that the fact is with your statement, I just go back to your statement, is that you're making a statement, I don't care what anyone else says, but the problem is you don't live alone. You live with other Jews. And if they don't agree with you, you might have a disagreement over some issue. That leads to another thing. Okay, pass me the apple. I asked for an apple, not an orange. Oh no, that's an apple. That's what we call an apple. Does that really go that far? Pass me a fruit. The guy gives you a tomato. The fact of the matter is that terms are used for communication. Communication means it's not just your definition. It means not just what you think an apple is. I walk around thinking an apple is an orange. I get by that way. Okay? When I go to my refrigerator, I say, oh, that's a really nice apple. It's nice and orange. The fact of the matter is, if I'm going to communicate, I have to be able to have some kind of word that makes a distinction. If I'm going to call Israel a Jewish state, I have to know what it means to be a Jewish state. So what does that term mean? When you ask what is a Jew, you're asking what does the term mean? Yeah.
I think that's actually a great example of the question of pass me a fruit, but if you're expecting an apple and you get an orange, then obviously there's a miscommunication.
Yes.
But also why what the gentleman over here said earlier resonated about, maybe Jewish is kind of the fruit in this case. And if you want to talk, if you're looking for any kind of fruit or any kind of Jew, you say Jew. But if you need to be specific, because you're trying to communicate something simple, you'd say, pass me a gala apple, or pass me an orange. And
Right.
that way you have to carry.
And that's where I get involved with definitions. Because are you a Reformed Jew, Conservative Jew, Orthodox Jew, Reconstructionist Jew, or none of the above? And then explain what you are if you're not one of those above, or explain that you don't have faith is not part of your definition of Jewishness.
So then you can specify.
No, I'm asking you a question. You can sit there and say, no, I don't know. I don't care. I'm not asking you to put you on the spot, but the fact of the matter is how many people who go to Reformed temples understand that they believe in Reformed Judaism and how it's distinct from Orthodox Judaism, and why Orthodox Judaism considers Reformed Judaism heresy equal to Messianic Judaism. When Shimshon Hirsch, let me just say, okay, separated from the general Jewish community in the 1800s in Germany. And remember, Shimshon Hirsch is considered to be one of the founders of modern Orthodoxy. He was very much involved in secular studies. But one of his most significant statements was he would have nothing to do with the Reform movement, on principle. In fact, there was a law before the German Parliament to outlaw Shechita, and there was a Reform rabbi who was writing a response to some German parliamentarian of why Shechita was important. Okay, and he was sending this letter in favor of Shechita to this German parliamentarian, and Shimshon Hirsch heard about that. And he had to be physically restrained at his home because he was going to go over to that German politician and basically say, whatever that Reform rabbi tells you, throw out. He's wrong. Because he would have nothing to do with the Reform movement on theological principles. He greatly accepted Jews. He was the father of modern day outreach. You walked into that thing and went through, he didn't ask you what you were, but in terms of theology, Reformed Judaism was equal to Messianic Judaism in his mind. And how many people recognize that on a theological basis? I can talk to Reformed rabbis. And by the way, you could read an interesting book by, Rabbi Sachs called One Judaism, where he raises some issues like this. Okay, and the fact that how many Jews really recognize the theological distinctions between the branches. And you know what happened? I read this somewhere, and I never saw it verified. But you know something, in Israel, religion, marriage and divorce are under religions, right? Okay, so is there one Christian marriage and divorce registry in Israel? My understanding is that the Greek Orthodox have their own system and the Catholics have their own system. Every branch of a religion has their own system. You don't have to be accepted by the Roman Catholics to marry in a Greek Orthodox church, right? Okay? So I have a simple solution to the problem the chief rabbinate in Israel with all these problems. Why not create a chief rabbinate for the Reform Judaism, a chief rabbinate for the Conservative Judaism, a chief rabbinate for Reconstructionist Judaism, and a chief rabbinate for the Orthodox? If you want to get married pursuant to Reform Judaism, you could do that here. Just go to a Reform temple. Why can't you do that in Israel? Yeah.
It's very simple, because the Orthodox Jews hold the balance in power and would never allow it to happen.
That's the answer most people give. And anyone know the real answer?
I don't know the real answer. My answer is do away with all chief rabbis.
Okay, get rid of religions. That's fine. No, get rid of all the religious aspect in the government.
No, separate religion and state. Yes,
Okay, fine. The truth of the matter is from what I read, Reform Judaism was offered that option in the 1950s by Israel, and they rejected it. We don't want to be seen as a cult.
They relate to the table, that's true.
Right? The fact is that Reform Judaism wants to call itself part of the big picture of Judaism. How many times do you hear a Reform rabbi say, I'm a Reform rabbi, or just a rabbi? Or how many do they want to say, I'm a rabbi, you're a rabbi, and so forth? I have a lot of conversations, I've had a lot of conversations with Reform and Conservative rabbis with very honest dialogues. I know their theology, they know mine. And we can have very, very open conversations. And I make it very clear, and they make it very clear, They're believers in Reform Judaism, I'm believers in Orthodox Judaism. And the fact of the matter is it's two different theologies. And I've argued with people, for example, in the Orthodox world, when they sit there and say, how could a Jew, a rabbi, be in favor of same-sex marriages? It's completely keneged Torah. And the fact of the matter is, yes, according to the Orthodox understanding of Torah, it's completely contrary to Torah. But according to Reform Judaism's understanding of Torah and Jewish theology and their view of Jewish theology, I've heard Reform rabbis say this is actually a full expression. Favors Rabbi Seplowitz, who was a rabbi, I think is his name. Rabbi Seplowitz was a rabbi in Hamilton. What? Zeplowitz, right? I said Zeplowitz. Rabbi Zeplowitz, who was a rabbi in Hamilton, who was very much advocated for same-sex marriages. He argued that this is an expression of his Jewish belief. Yeah, it's an expression of Reformed Jewish belief. I'm not a believer in Reformed Judaism. I'm a believer in Orthodox Judaism. I disagree. And he is a believer in Reformed Judaism and not Orthodox Judaism. He disagrees as the expression of their faith. But the average Jew, two rabbis. No, two rabbis who have very, very major disagreements in faith. And the fact of the matter is, how do you relate between them? You can only relate between them if you have an understanding of that dialogue, which I can do when I talk to people. Most people can't do it, and therefore most people think it's this or that. Now, are there other issues involved and so forth and so forth? Yes. And is it true that both groups, there's people in the Orthodox who try to say there's only one Judaism and impose it that way, and there's people in the Reform movement who basically say there's one Judaism they want this way. No, there's different perspectives. Yeah.
There's a comment over there.
Yes.
But, I'm getting the impression that those people who identify Orthodox follow all the Orthodox rules, like it's that clear. And those that come from Reform follow the Orthodox.
Follow the Reform rules.
It isn't that, okay? I was born into a traditional family and attended what we would call today a modern Orthodox congregation.
Okay.
They didn't call it in those days.
Okay.
Modern, okay? My bar mitzvah was there. I was
Right.
married by the rabbi there.
Right.
I am a Reform Jew by choice.
Right.
I don't want to
So tell me the theological distinctions. I'm not talking practice.
I live exactly the same way
And I want,
as I live.
you're absolutely correct. And you're absolutely,
Rabbis are making too big a fuss.
and you're
about
absolutely
this.
correct. And what's being done is you don't know anything about the theology. I gave a talk
Theology about the Reform,
of Orthodox or Reform.
I think I know a little bit.
Okay, tell me some aspects of the principles of Orthodox Judaism. Why you can't accept Reform Judaism. Give me some aspects of Reform
The
Judaism.
kashrut, you mean?
No, the principles, the theology, the faith. What do you believe in?
The dead will not come back.
How
again.
many people?
What? The what?
Reform does not believe that the dead will come back.
That's
again.
not necessarily true. There are aspects of Reform Judaism that basically say that, but there's other aspects that are different.
That God gave Torah on one side.
Oh, what does that mean? Yeah, Christianity also believes God gave a Torah on one side. What does it mean?
Reform don't, right?
Nowadays, modern Reform doesn't, but there could be. The fact is,
Okay,
the fact
maybe
is,
the rabbis
but wait a
should
sec,
have
wait a
that
sec, wait a
debate.
sec, wait a
But
sec.
the people who follow it.
Yeah, you're
aren't going
right.
to be able to have that discussion.
And what you're saying is,
And they
It's-
consider themselves Jews.
and-
Maybe the rabbis are the only Jews.
and the fact is, by the way, I didn't say you had to notice to be a Jew. What I'm sitting there and saying is you just identified something. I made a speech and I found it quoted by various people. The greatest. Let me phrase this a different way. What did you do for your bar mitzvah?
What did I do?
Yeah.
Like the Brachot and the Haftorah.
Yeah. Did you understand Haftorah when you read it
Yes.
in Hebrew?
Well, largely, a product of a day school.
Okay, so you read it and you understood it.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
substantially, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Good. And that was the conclusion of your Haftorah, of your bar mitzvah, the ability to read the Haftorah.
Well, I don't know where that question.
Okay,
is leading.
okay.
I mean, I went from
How much Gemara
8
did you?
years
How?
to day school,
Okay, how much
and then
Gemara did
another
you?
4 years,
How much Gemara did you study? Another 4 years where?
Beyond. Pardon me, in high school I went to the public system, but I continued
Okay.
3 afternoons a week in Hebrew school.
Okay, how much Gemara did you learn?
How much Torah?
Gemara.
You know what, this
Make
is
your-
not the
make your
issue.
No, wait a sec. Wait a sec. Wait a sec.
Oh, just a little bit.
Okay,
Within
okay.
that period
Let
of
me.
time.
So I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, I don't
My
want to
two
do that.
sons do not know how to do a Haftorah. At their bar mitzvah, I basically said the one thing you will not do is a haftorah. On principle.
Okay, I want to ask you,
Now, why would I do that? No, at the mafter, why would I do that? On principle.
as an Orthodox rabbi, if you're value driven, how can you reject gay people?
One sec.
You got the same.
No, okay. And by the way, that's a good question. The fact of the matter is we should be discussing this. Okay, I don't know if we can do it today. We can do this. No, the point is, do you understand what I'm saying? How many people are surprised I tell you my two boys do not know how to do a haftorah?
I'm amused by it, but not surprised.
Why aren't you surprised?
I don't know. It doesn't bother me. I only did Torah. I didn't do the Haftarah.
Okay, they also don't know how to lean either. Now, the truth of the matter, the fact of the matter is I believe nothing did more to destroy Jewish identity. Okay, the reason Simon and Garfunkel basically said, after they had their bar mitzvahs, I'm getting out of this, is because their definition of Jewishness was the ability to sing the Boo Ba Bee in different tunes. And when I say sing the Boo Ba Bee is different than you, they didn't understand it either. They didn't understand the Hebrew. We don't teach ideas in Jewish education. The question is, well, what about kashrus? What about Shabbos? I'm talking ideas. When I ask the question of what is a Jew, I'm talking ideas. Now, your question of why is that? Because because Orthodox Judaism believes the Word of God is expressed in the Torah, and the Torah is against male homosexual activity. And that leads to a problem, because what about individuals who were born that way? So that's a tremendous discussion within Orthodoxy of how to relate to that. But the fact is how many times we ever deal with ideas. Does anyone even know what Judaism really believes in? What does it mean by God? Oh, he's God at Sinai. Well, what do Christians believe in Sinai? I'm not sure if Muslims also believe something happened there or not. But the fact of the matter is what's the distinction between Jewish view of Sinai and a Christian view of Sinai? Why is it that fundamentalism is fundamentally against Judaism? Why? Because the essence of the revelation of Sinai was, what did God give? That's the essence of the revelation of Sinai. What's the most important thing that God gave on Sinai? 10 Commandments. Wrong. Next. What?
Rules of proper behavior.
How? How do you express those rules?
Orally.
Orally? In an obscure manner that demanded human thought. Go look at the beginning of Moshe Feinstein's work on the Igros Moshe, which is responsive literature. If God wanted to express something black and white, he could have just said, do this, don't do this, and so forth. He didn't do it that way. God did two things that challenges the fundamentalist Christian viewpoint. A, it was mostly oral. The real essence of Revelation at Sinai was mostly oral. Again, go look at Shimshon Raphael Hirsch's commentary. God gave an oral revelation of thought and ideas, and wrote down some scrib notes to remind you of what he said orally. And B, quoting Ramosha, he did so in a way that demanded human thought. So therefore, the Jewish revelation is, you better put your thinking caps on, spend a couple generations trying to understand it. And then you can think. And then maybe you'll get what he says. Oh, you can't do that, so you better just listen to what the rabbis tell you, because they're putting in the time. But it's not fundamentalist, it's not black and white, it's thinking. And all of a sudden, we forgot that thinking. So when my kids did their bar mitzvah, what do you think they did? On what?
Judaism.
They did siyums on tractates in the Talmud. They had to go through Talmudic places, through tractates in the Talmud, and they continue studying tractates in the Talmud. It's thinking. That's what really marked us out. Our revelation was totally different. How many Jews even know that? that we are believers not in the Ten Commandments, although the Ten Commandments were there. We are believers in the oral Torah. That's the essence of Orthodox Jewish law. Now, the truth of the matter is, it's also fundamental to conservative and Reform Judaism as well. As Reform Judaism likes to point out, they also value the oral Torah more than the written Torah in a different way, even though it didn't come from Sinai. That's why they really push the rabbis, because the rabbis are the progeny of the oral tradition. Now, what am I really doing with this in terms of this question? What is a Jew? This is just fundamental facts of Jewishness. I'm saying something that in a Christian Sunday school, this kind of theology would be taught in grade 1 and grade 2 and grade 3. Can you imagine going to a Christian Sunday school and saying, guy comes out, graduate, and so forth and so forth. Oh yeah, I know how to do this. I know how to sing this. Jesus? What's a Jesus? We don't teach any theology in our schools. And especially we don't teach the differences in theology between the branches of Jewishness. And then we wonder why Jews don't know what they're doing or what they are. Jewish identity. I can't marry. No, I'm against intermarriage. Well, you know what being against intermarriage sounds like? It sounds like you're racist. Why are you against intermarriage? Do you know how many times I've run into people who are so upset that they're I remember this one couple, really nice couple, elderly couple. They were telling me how their son was going to marry a non-Jew and it just broke their heart. Now, she was going to keep kosher because the son wanted to keep kosher, even though he was intermarrying. But then they met her. And she was such a wonderful person and such a good person. We just love her. We embrace her. I look at this and what do you think? A non-Jew's not a good person? If the guy's going to marry a non-Jew, what he says, I'm leaving all the nice Jewish girls to go with the non-Jewish person who's blankety blank. No, he picked her because she was a really nice person. And then they regret. No, but we Jews. Okay, so what happens if you say you can't intermarry? It's racism. Right? What's the difference between telling a white you can't marry a black? Oh, so when I had a professor in university who was deeply involved in helping third world countries. He's a professor of economics, deeply involved in helping third world countries and so forth. And he prided himself on being very involved. I knew the question was going to come one day. And finally it did. Ben, are you only going to marry a Jew? You know what my answer was? I said to him, I would like to have a certain lifestyle. I follow certain beliefs. I like a certain lifestyle. I think that in order to follow my lifestyle ideas, I have to marry someone who will share my desire for a similar lifestyle. So in that regard, I will marry a Jew. But boy, if you think she has to be born Jewish, no, I would marry Ruth. Very nicely. The fact of the matter is that, and he looked at me and said, I can understand that. But it wasn't just, well, you got to marry a Jew. Why? I don't know. Got to marry a Jew. Right? Is she going to do anything different than any non-Jew? No, but it's got to be Jewish. The fact of the matter is what I haven't answered the question of what is a Jew. But I've raised the question.
And is it up to the Orthodox to decide?
No, it's not. Now let me, okay. No, I'm not. I want to give two closing remarks. I'll let you say something first.
Okay. I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yes?
And here's the clarification I'd like. If your sons, for example, choose not to embrace the concept of questioning and ideas and everything you've described, do they lose their born Jewishness?
No. I am not saying that. Let me try and explain this. I'm not saying, what you're getting to is a good question. So how do you have born Jewishness? Jewishness is now an idea. So therefore, Jewishness should be like a doctor. Once you get your degree, you get the degree. Okay, so let me answer that question. I was thinking you were going to ask me another question. Professor Marty Luxon once asked me, given the fact that I'm very much into thought and so forth. Actually, I think it was his wife who asked me a question. He said, if your son wanted to become a Satmar Chassid, obviously I'm not a Satmar Chassid, how would you respond? And I looked at her and said, if they made the decision with thought and reason, I would have to accept it. And she looked at me and she said, yeah, that's the answer I should expect from you. Okay, let me finish up with a couple fast things, okay? Okay. There are two issues before us. Before the third one, which I'll speak about after I finish this talk on gay marriages, if you want, for a second. Number one, the original issue and difficulty arises in the halacha. The halacha has two definitions of being Jewish. One definition is born to a Jewish mother. Has nothing to do with thought. You're born to a Jewish mother, you're Jewish. Okay? Now, what does that mean? Born to a Jewish mother, you're Jewish.
Is that in the Torah? No.
No. But why?
No.
Why?
So-
No. And therefore,
But
what's
it
the
was created
what's
under-
the answer to that question? Is it in the Torah? When you made the Torah, it's the 5 books of
Well,
Moses.
it was patrilineal descent.
Wait a sec. I'm not accepting that either. What's my response as an Orthodox rabbi if it's in the Torah?
Okay, you're
Yes,
in the
because
oral
it's oral.
tradition.
Okay, let me explain
In the
this. Let me
medieval times.
explain this. If it's in the Torah and that's what you look at, you are a Karaites. Karaites, by the way, are accepted as Jews under the law of return. Okay, you should know that. That's Karaite religion. When I am asked the question if it's in the Torah, my answer is, so what? What does that matter? Because I am an Orthodox rabbi, I'm not a Karaite rabbi. And if you want to you talk about Karaite rabbis, Google Karaite rabbis.
Yeah, but you
and
mentioned that it's
excuse me. Then you have to. Now you're asking further questions. What is the relationship of the written Torah to the oral Torah? So the fact of the matter is there are certain things that are written Torah, certain things in the oral Torah. The lack of something being in the written Torah does not mean that it does not have any lesser authority. Okay? Because my acceptance of the full revelation is a written and oral Torah. So the truth is you're asking me to give you all Torah on one foot, which I can't do right now. My legs hurt. But the fact is that couldn't do it anyways. But the fact is that what you're asking, when you ask a question, is it written in the Torah? Basically, what you're informing me is you don't know about Orthodox Judaism. And who has ever told you that Orthodox Judaism is bound by a written Torah is mistaken.
Sorry, you brought it up.
No, I did not bring it up.
About homosexuality.
The fact of the matter is because that's a statement that is in the written Torah, but it's also supported by the oral Torah. Okay, and then it gets into further aspects of what exactly is forbidden or not, and that's defined in the oral Torah. The written Torah does not live alone, and the oral Torah doesn't live alone. I specifically answered your question because it is in the written Torah. But when you ask me a question about this, it's not in the written Torah, so what? It's in the oral Torah. Two major sources of equal validity. That's what's important, of equal validity. Okay? Now, the thing is like this. Let's get into this. I want to wrap up this thing. The first issue is a halachic issue. You're born to a Jewish mother, has no religious theology to it. The second definition of Jewish identity is conversion. And what do you need to convert? What did Ruth have to do to convert? More than anything else. Yeah, everyone says, the Orthodox demand tefillah, dumping in the mikveh, and if you're a man, you need circumcision. But what really is essential in order to accept conversion? To convert in, it's Kabbalah's mitzvot. You have to accept the theology and the action of mitzvot. So Ruth was an Orthodox woman upon conversion. That's what it was. So the fact of the matter is you have one definition of conversion which is defined by theology, and one definition which is defined by national. Now how does that come together? So let me ask you something. Is a religion of Judaism universal? Does it apply to every human being? What do you think? What? It should, so we proselytize. If it applies, why don't we proselytize then? Okay, so I once was speaking in Providence, Rhode Island, and a guy got up there and said, Rabbi, 30 years ago this minister spoke from exactly the place where you are and asked me a question. He said, how come you guys don't proselytize? If you got the truth, if you got what's good for everyone, why don't you share it with people? It's like if I had the cure for cancer, why wouldn't I share it with someone? So his answer is, I'll try and wrap up really quickly. So his answer is, so what's wrong with that? So we don't proselytize to have people become Jewish. But the Rambam does talk about something else. The Noachide. What does that really mean? It means that there's a universal religion of Judaism that has one let's say right now, one theological system. And that theological system makes a distinction between what is expected of a non-Jew and expected of a small group of people called the Jewish people. And in that regard, if you're a non-Jew, you have 7 laws, or 7 general categories of law. And if you're a Jew, you have to follow Torah. So when we say someone is born Jewish, what we're basically saying, okay, what's your obligation? The Jewish nation's obligation is following 613 commandments. If not, you're a non-Jew, you have to follow Noahide commandments. Now, if you want to move from the Noahide group into the special nation of Jews, you can do so by accepting the mitzvot. That's really the halachic definition. So really, who is born to a Jew is Jewish. Okay. Now the truth is, you have nationalistic and what happened in the 1800s. You had a tremendous divide between nationalism and religion. Reform Judaism said we're a religion, not a nation. That's why they were anti-Zionistic. Secular Zionism said we're a nation and not a religion, and therefore they rejected religion. And therefore we have the modern world today, which has all these things coming down to not knowing the origins of these things and trying to figure out what we are as Jews. And we have a definition that is nationalistic without religion, and we have an aspect of religion without nationalism, and we don't know how to put it together. And in that process, all I was trying to show you is we don't even know how to ask the questions. And all I'm trying to say is that's the question. What is a Jew was not supposed to give you the answer. My goal today was to confuse you. And I hope I did that. And my goal today is to get you to go out there to learn more about this. And by the way, if you're interested, I have a website called Nishma.org. And if you're interested, I deal with some of these issues on the website. And you're invited to look at it. Okay.
You believe